All right, welcome everyone to another episode of O365A. In this episode, we're talking with another Microsoft partner, Nectar, who provide analytics and reporting. We have a guest speaker today, is Ken Lasko from Nectar. So welcome, Ken. Thanks for hopping on the podcast with us. Really appreciate it. So maybe if you could introduce yourself and give a little bit of the company history.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm Ken Lasko. I'm fellow MVP with the rest of these guys here and also Canadian. So how's it going, eh? Woohoo. So I work for Nectar Corporation. We do cloud analytics for Skype for Business, Cisco, and Avaya. We've been doing this for a number of years now. I actually joined here just over a year and a quarter ago from Event Zero, where we made UC Commander. And Nectar just seemed like with the sale of the Microsoft or of the solution to Microsoft, it just seemed like a good fit, and it certainly was, because there was so many things that I wanted to do with the UC Commander solution that I wasn't able to do after it was sold to Microsoft. And it just so happened that Nectar, they've been in this business for a long time. They've been doing they started off doing network analytics, and then they grew into the UC space relatively soon afterwards, and they've been expanding ever since. So they brought me on board because they were embarking on a very ambitious, complete rewrite of their UI solution, their UI. The tools that they use have grown and expanded and multiplied over the years, and it's, to be honest, it's a little bit unwieldy. Like there's several different user interfaces. They're rather dated. They all do slightly different things. Like, it's very, very powerful, but you have to be fairly educated in the tool to be able to use them effectively. So we realized that the marketplace is moving to something, much more cloud-based, easier to use. So Nectar's took the last almost 2 years now to completely redo the UI. So it's going to be much more cloud-focused, much easier to use, and you'll be able to do everything in just one simple web-based UI. So what we're calling that is called Nectar 10. So Nectar 10, we've gone from Nectar 7 and we're going straight to Nectar 10, kind of like what Apple does and everybody else seems to do these days. Just keep skipping numbers because, hey, why not? Why not, right? So what Nectar does, so we do cloud analytics, and what we do differently from what everybody else does is that we try to gather information from all kinds of different sources. So a lot of vendors out there are able to get their information from Skype for Business, obviously through the QoE and the CDR databases. But we also can get information directly from the Skype servers, and we get the typical things like service status. We can alert on random events and things like that, and also the standard KHIs. But we go beyond that because there's actually a whole bunch of really cool things that administrators would like to be able to do that a lot of the tools don't. Like some things that administrators are always checking on, or at least I find them always doing, is things like making sure that the central management store replication status is up to date on all servers. Because every once in a while, you're going to get one server that just decides to start saying false, stops updating, and you don't even notice until random things start going wrong. Like the odd person can't log into Skype anymore, new user, because replication hasn't happened. And it might take you a while before you even realize things like that are going on. So what we're trying to do is we try to alert you to those sorts of administrative things that nobody else typically does. And another thing we do, so we layer in all that sort of stuff into the UI, and we also layer in actual network layer information. So every other tool just gets, they take the information they get from Skype for Business, which is pretty, quite a bit of it, including, like jitter, packet loss, and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of companies can do things like saying, hey, you know what, we're noticing that there's issues at this site or things like that. But we take it a step further because we're able to actually get information from the network layer. Because again, Nectar started as a network monitoring tool. So we've got a very, very strong presence in the networking space, meaning that we can actually plug into your network, into your core switches, and be able to see the traffic as it's going through. So we look at it. We look at calls as they're activated, either on Skype, Cisco, or Avaya. And as soon as we know that call is active, we start looking at the network, and we start capturing the network packets for those calls. And then at the end of the call, we store those in standard PCAPs that you can use in Wireshark, so that if you have an issue with a call, the network team, first thing you're going to say is, well, can you replicate the issue? How many times can you actually replicate a call quality issue after the fact? How many times, guys? Not terribly often, right? So the nice thing is that we can actually say, you know what, we can go get that PCAP and then send it to them, and they can go analyze and see what's going on. And we can even actually tell you if we're listening to the right places, we are able to actually tell you, we're able to say that, hey, we notice that this port on this switch is actually dropping a whole ton of packets. And you might want to look at that. Or we notice that, hey, DHCP markings are we can see that as traffic's coming through this switch, traffic's getting marked with DHCP markings. But then when it goes through this other switch, we notice that they're being dropped. So we get to the kind of network layer information that you don't get from any other tool. So that's what we do. So we're aggregating information from all kinds of different sources and bringing them together into one screen, one place. We're able to troubleshoot your calls. And that also extends to even devices. I'll let you talk in a second. We also get to the device level too. So Plantronics, Jabra, and other vendors, we can get device analytics directly from the manufacturer. So especially Plantronics, if you've got a Bluetooth headset like the one I'm using right now, we can actually get the Bluetooth signal level and other metrics that get pushed out by Plantronics, and we can present that to the administrator as well. Because there could be times where a call is actually perfect quality, but the guy wandered too far away from his laptop and everything sounded all garbled. They say, well, my call was garbage. What's going on? So, well, because you walked too far away from your headset, or your thing was running out of juice or something like that. So we're able to get ear-to-ear diagnostics, is what we like to call it.
So that's a lot of like data that you guys you're pulling in. So which is awesome. So that's traditionally, I guess, on the on-prem side of things. So on the Nectar 10, which is primarily in the cloud, how are you guys focusing on gathering that information from the on-prem and also integrating that on the, I guess, the Microsoft Cloud side?
Yep. So two parts of that. So for on-prem customers, so we have something that's called a RIG. It's called a Remote Intelligence Gateway. And so that is just a server that you put on-prem, and that acts as a collection point for everything that goes on in your network. That's the core piece. So from that server, we're able to gather all your QoE and CDR metrics. We're able to connect to your Cisco and Avaya phone systems to be able to get metrics from that. We reach out via PowerShell and get all your KHIs, system status, and all that sort of stuff for Skype for Business servers. And then we have other servers that are used for diagnostics that we plug into that connect to your switches and all that sort of stuff to get the switch level diagnostics. So all that gets fed into the rig, and then through another service gets pushed up to the cloud for long-term data capture, analysis, and display. And for the cloud-based stuff, so this is where things get a little bit interesting. So there's a lot of confusion out there right now about what kind of things you can do with cloud analytics, especially with regards to Skype for Business and Teams. So if you're using Skype for Business and you want to get cloud analytics, there's very, very few things that you can do. You can use, now there is a way you can get data out of the cloud by using a PowerShell command, but that is very limited because you have to say, first of all, you have to specify the user. I think one of you guys actually came up with a script. Which one of you guys?
Yeah,
was it Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, you came up with a script for that. So a great script, by the way. And so you can use that to be able to say, pull out call information for user X for the past whatever time frame, right? So that's great and everything. And it pulls it out into JSON format, right? So it's very easy to parse and do wonderful things with it. But to put that into an enterprise scale solution, it doesn't work because first of all, you have to be constantly running these PowerShell commands. We actually tried it. We tried to see how much it would scale. It doesn't scale much beyond 100 people because what you got to do is first of all, you got to get a list of every user and then run that PowerShell command for every user and just keep running it through all time. And beyond 100 users, it just doesn't scale anymore.
And there's
in regards to
throttling and a bunch of other issues,
yeah, and all that sort of stuff that goes along with it. And plus, another thing is the only permission that works to even see this data is you have to be a full Skype for Business online administrator, which is not something that a lot of vendors really want to, or customers want to give to their vendors, right? With good cause, right? And in terms of Teams, is there any way to get any sort of call analytics out of there other than using the built-in stuff on Office 365? Well, currently, no. And when I say call analytics, I mean like actual call data. There are a lot of APIs available out there for getting Teams-based analytics in terms of, room usage, Teams usage, user activity and that sort of stuff, but it's all relating to just documents and things like that. There is nothing available right now for call data, for getting real time or even historical call data like you can get out of on-prem type environments. Oh, we lost Mike.
Yeah, he'll be right back.
He'll be right back. So now we're hoping that Microsoft at some point is going to release an API. We got a lot of customers asking for it, so we just have to wait and see what's going to happen in regards to that.
Now, Ken, if you have a customer who's Skype for Business Online or Teams, with the architecture you just described, they can still get network layer call information, can they?
For a Teams call?
Yeah.
No. So here's the thing, right? So for us to be able to get network level analytics, we need to know a couple of key bits of information. We need to know when the call started, we need to know when the call ended, and we need to know the IP addresses and ports of the parties involved, right? Because if we're looking at a switch, we cannot be just looking and pulling down every single call that's coming in. It's just not feasible. Or every single bit of packet data that's coming in.
Maybe with your rig you could identify Teams calls, but that rig is simply used to bridge the on-prem with the cloud, is it?
Right. Well, yeah, but the key thing is that for us to be able to get that network level analytics, we need to know when the call starts. Gotcha. And so right now, as far as I know, there's no plans for Microsoft to release any sort of API that does real-time call analytics. Like I've heard that there's probably going to be something coming down the pipe sometime for historical analytics. So after the call is done, so something like you would see in the LCS CDR and QE metrics, but nothing that replicates like the SDN API where you're able to see real-time call information. So again, we've got a lot of customers who are relying on our tools now for their network analytics. So we got one customer who's actually out in BC. I don't really want to give the name, but they put in our diagnostics product, and he came over to our booth at Enterprise Connect last week, and he said, "You guys saved me," because for 6 months he had been fighting with the network team over call quality issues, and they kept saying, "No, it's Skype, it's Skype," and it was getting to the point where his CTO was saying, "We're going to get rid of Skype entirely because you can't fix this problem." And so he finally, he was getting very frustrated. He went and put us in. And on the very first day where we were doing a training session that was recorded with their network team, you could hear them sitting there going, "No, that's not right. No, that can't be right. Is that right? It is? How can that be right?" And right in the middle of that session, he said he recorded and he plays it back for them all the time, how he was able to prove in that very first session that there was a problem with the network that was impacting call quality. So that was with an on-prem solution. So customers are going to want to keep that as they migrate to Teams, because everybody's going to go to Teams at some point. But until Microsoft actually releases a real-time API, there's probably going to be a good number of large enterprise customers that use our tool that are just not willing to go to Teams yet.
Right.
So Ken, maybe just taking a different lens, like what would you say the biggest problem your customers are facing, and like how Nectar is solving them? Like you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, what are you seeing time and time again?
The biggest problem is just trying to get down to the nitty-gritty details of why was this call bad? Why was my conference bad? Right? Like it's fine to say, "Oh yeah, you had packet loss. Oh, you had jitter and stuff like that." That's great, right? That tells you, that confirms what the user already told you, that the call was bad. But you got to take it to the next level. You got to be able to say why the call was bad. Where was the call bad, right? Like it's you got to get into a little more detail than that. And again, and there's usually 3 areas where call quality issues come into play: headset, like the device that the user is using, the infrastructure, or the network, right? Usually, like in my history, the application is usually never the problem. Like the server itself are always fine, right? And again, when you're talking point-to-point calls, the server's never usually involved anyway. So that leaves you network and endpoint issues. So those 2 are usually, I would say it's probably more towards a network, but then the next biggest one is endpoint. So being able to distinguish between a network issue and an endpoint issue is extremely important as well.
Cool. And you talked about RIG. Maybe talk about some of the other, in terms of the solution architecture of Nectar. In terms of it's all on-prem, are you going to start looking at moving it all to the cloud, or is there a hybrid approach? Yeah,
there's a hybrid approach. So for customers who are on-prem, who have any on-prem equipment right now, so you're going to want to have that RIG. in place for the collection of data for all your on-prem devices. But we also will support customers who are, again, once there is an API in place, we will support customers who are all in the cloud. And there's more and more of these as they're going on. So you won't have to have anything on-prem at all, unless, again, if you do want to have that, the network level analytics, because even though you're in the cloud for your calling and stuff like that, all that does is remove one piece from the chain. It removes the infrastructure issues, like in terms of server issues. You are still going to have endpoint and network issues to contend with, no matter what you do. So I think people think that moving to the cloud is going to be the end of all their problems. No, it takes away some of it, but you're still going to have the other things.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Hey, Ken, I'm curious about licensing. If a customer is interested in this solution, is it licensed per managed user? Is it per tenant? How is
per
that?
user? Yeah, it's managed per user, basically. Yeah.
Cool. And if someone wants to try it out, does Nectar offer trial licenses?
They do, but it's because it's not the simplest thing to put in. Sometimes we don't really offer that on a wide basis unless you're like a big customer.
I guess once a customer is interested enough, there's an engagement, and then
exactly, yeah,
a trial.
Oh yeah, like there's trial. Yeah, So we do have for certain customers we do trials and things like that. But most customers, once they see it in action, it's enough for them, and then they realize like it's an investment, right? Like it's not something you can just say, okay, especially with the network analytics, it's not something you just say, okay, we're going to put it in, because this is a network affecting event, right? When you're putting in the diagnostics tool, because we need to have a span port so that we're actually able to feed traffic off your core switches and things like that. So it's not something you can just say, I'm just going to run this installer executable here and just play with it for a few weeks. It's a little bit more involved than that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not like it was like Event Zero. It was very easy because there was only one data point touch. It was touching the QACDR. So it was a very simple thing. But we are gathering information from so many different areas. It's very difficult to make it a just next type solution.
Cool.
And Ken, I really think that ear-to-ear diagnostics is really what kind of sets you guys apart from the other players in the market. So you said that you can tie into the headsets and stuff from Plantronics and Jabber and all that, and so you're pulling that all into that same dashboard. How else are you pulling that data in there? There's Graph. Are you using Graph yet, or just PowerShell or SNMP on the network side?
It depends. Yeah, it depends on the vendor, right? So certain vendors, this is that solution, the whole thing with the UK thing right there. There we go. Perfect. A lot of vendors, again, they don't even have APIs. Like some of the ones we've been dealing with, they don't have anything, but they're building them from scratch basically to our specs. So what we generally recommend is kind of like a JSON type API approach, which we can access from some central management server or something like that. It all depends on the vendor and then their chosen way of managing their devices. So it varies.
Cool.
But we work, and there's other vendors out there that we're starting to work with. I can't really tell you right now, but we've gotten a lot of interest from other cloud-based conferencing providers out there.
Sure. Yeah.
that want to get on board this train too, which is, it's kind of a cool place to be. We got vendors coming to us going, hey, we want to get data into your product. That to me, that's kind of wild and awesome that happens. And that happened with some other headset vendors as well. We had them come to our booth last week and just started with a conversation about, okay, how can we get in on this? I'm like, hey, all right, first give me money. That's right.
Nice.
Oh,
Muted.
Abib, you're muted, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, good. Well, no, I was going to say, thanks, Ken, for coming on and talking about Nectar and what you guys are doing today and what you guys are going to be doing in the future. And I think the website is nectarcorp.com.
Yep, that's it.
To get the latest and greatest information from a roadmap and functionality perspective. So again, appreciate you coming on, and thanks everybody for listening in, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.